So, good morning, everyone. You are here for Internet Safety, an overview. So my name is Amy Tobolsky. I am the clinical supervisor here at Milestone Healthcare Quality Unit Northwest. I actually have been with the agency since we began in 2002. I was our behavioral health specialist for many years before moving into my current role. But prior to that, I spent a lot of years working with folks with intellectual and developmental disabilities, predominantly in a residential program. I did some children and youth work as well, children's mental health actually. So I did the math recently, frighteningly. I've been doing this for over 30 years now. So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing sometimes, but anyway, I've been around a while. And so this is something that doing these internet safety modules has really been something that has been needed, I think, for a long time. I think a lot of people have recognized that. And we just decided to take the time to do it. So before we get started, a couple things. I would absolutely like to thank Alan McGill. Alan McGill is a senior supervisory special agent with the Office of Public Engagement in the Pennsylvania Office of the Attorney General. And he has really been integral for us in terms of providing expertise, providing guidance as we moved forward. He did a Speaker of the Month for us last year on romance scams. And from that, it sort of grew to him sort of being a really great resource for us as we move forward developing these modules. And as always, if you've been to our trainings, you've seen this, right? That anything that we present should never take the place of doctor's advice or agency policy. And in this case, this is not intended to be legal advice either. We're simply here to offer suggestions to help you more effectively support folks you serve and their families. I doubt that there's going to be anything too terribly controversial today. We're just really sharing information on what we're doing with regard to the internet safety. But again, So our objectives for today is for you to become familiar with the internet safety modules, both in terms of their content and their format, and that you will be able to identify some strategies that you can use to support folks to maximize their learning from the internet safety module. So we really developed these modules, these training modules, in response to frequent requests that we were receiving for supporting individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities to stay safe on the internet. People were putting themselves in financial, emotional, legal, and even physical danger because they clicked on the wrong link or believed in the honesty of the people they met online. And if you're attending this training, you likely have heard at least one story of someone you support sending intimate pictures to someone they've never met but think they know, or giving out personal information like their social security or bank account numbers, or maybe it's somebody who was preparing to go to meet a stranger who claimed to be someone trustworthy. While the types of scams perpetuated on the folks that we support are varied, there is one commonality that surfaces time and time again. Supporters often struggle to convince the person that they are being scammed. So our hope is that these educational models provide an external, neutral source to help individuals recognize when they are in danger and give you as supporters information and tools to guide them. So in order to combat the dangers of the internet, it's important to understand its allure. The internet can provide anonymity. You can be whoever you want to be online. For people with intellectual and developmental disabilities in particular, it provides freedom from at least immediate identification as a person with a disability. They don't have to be that person online. It provides freedom from isolation caused by lack of transportation, limited face-to-face interactions due to the person's circumstances, maybe their disability, and of course, most recently, limitations related to the pandemic. People are more readily able to explore and connect with others who share their own interests when they're online. And quite frankly, it can be an exciting alternative to the humdrum of everyday life. So when we looked at the internet safety modules, we looked to create specific modules that cover specific topics. And they're designed to be used independently from each other, but at the same time, they repeat and reinforce important concepts between the modules. And while there's no prescribed order, it's recommended to begin with tricky people, since it really provides an overall picture of the basic tricks that scammers use, as well as introducing the learner to some of the basic terminology. The process that people would go through is they would watch a recorded training. They would sign up for that through our learning management system, LearnApod, and they would watch the recorded training. And then after that, we have a self-guided test. The test provides real-world examples. It walks the person through potential responses and outcomes. If they make an incorrect response, we reteach and then loop the person back to try again. Correct responses lead to a statement that reinforces the concept and then moves the person onward through the test. And then, of course, people will want to, if they can, or if you can help them, download and print out the handout. There is a one-page handout that's available for each module for easy reference and review of the basic contents and concepts that relate to that topic. So this example here is the handout from Tricky People. And as you can see, we just really tried to get as much of the information as we could onto the handout without it being, a little bit overwhelming. But we wanted to at least touch on those basic concepts so people can have it visually right in front of them to continue to refer back to. And then we also have, in addition to the handouts for learners, we have a supporters handout. And this is really almost a manual. And its intention is to provide you as the supporter information to help people keep themselves safe. So it includes some general tips for talking with people about internet safety. And then it also goes into more detail in the different topics of the modules. So you'll find that the information in the manual will cover what's in the training that the individual sees, but then it's also going to have a lot more information in it than just what's covered. There's simply, too many tactics used by scammers to cover it all without overwhelming the learner. But the supplemental information and resources is provided in the supporters manual to help you recognize and talk with individuals about situations that may not be explicitly covered in the training modules. And it's also intended to give you the information you need to help someone take the next steps when they suspect that they are being or they have been scammed. So the purpose of the modules, it's to teach. The tests are to reinforce and reteach, and the handouts are for reference. The support for supporters are intended to all work together to provide that neutral source of information to help people make those connections. Again, connect between what's happening online for them and the red flags of encountering a tricky person. And our ultimate goal, as for all of us, right, is to keep people safe. Educating people about potential scams before they occur is the best method of prevention. Now, I do want to take a quick moment and note that we do attempt to be gender neutral as much as possible in these trainings. We frequently use the terms they and them versus he, him, or she, her, in recognition of and respect for differences in sexual orientation, gender identity, and gender expression. We did this also because we want to make sure that, our literal thinkers out there don't think that, these only apply to heterosexual relationships. That's not to say that, those types of relationships aren't represented as well, but we really do try when we can to keep things sort of gender neutral with pictures and with terminology. And while each module covers a specific topic, and again, it's designed to be used independently, we do repeat and reinforce those important concepts. We use language and visuals that are consistent between the modules. Because so many scams rely on an emotional reaction from the victims, we use emojis to represent the individual. And then to be clear that the bad guy is the scammer, the tricky person, we use a black hooded figure. And we also use animations and voiceovers to make the training more interesting. I want to be with you forever. Will you marry me? The modules and handouts consistently review certain things. One of those is what constitutes personal information. So that is your full name, address, cell phone number, bank account and credit card numbers, usernames and passwords, and social security number. Another key concept that we review frequently is the idea that tricky people ask for money in untraceable ways. Prepaid cards, gift cards, money transfers, digital currency, in addition to account numbers, et cetera, that are included in the personal information as well. Another thing that's really important to continually reinforce with folks and to be very clear about is that they are not being rude. They're being smart. If they stop online contact or phone contact or texting, they stop contact with anyone who makes them feel uncomfortable or uncertain in any way. And then this is where supporters come in, because every single training, every module encourages people to talk to someone they trust if they have any questions, concerns, or reservations before they do anything or give anyone information online, by text, or by phone. And if you are the person that they trust to turn to with questions, we wanted to make sure that you had the information that you need to help. And so again, that's why we developed the handout for supporters, is just to make sure that you have something to turn to that can give you information, or at the very least point you in the right direction on where to find it. So what I thought we'd do at this point is take a look at each of the modules just briefly, so to give you kind of a sense of what's covered in them. And as I said earlier, Tricky People is a recommended place to start because it provides an overview of much of the terminology and the concepts that are used really throughout the modules. And while other modules focus on specific tactics related to the specific topic, Tricky People offers really a more general perspective in terms of the things most scams have in common. So for example, tricky people pretend to be someone they are not. Pretending to be your friend who is in trouble and needs your help is a fear tactic, while pretending to be your boy or girlfriend is part of a romance scam. They may pretend to be from the government, law enforcement, or your bank, and that's typically related to some kind of fear tactic or a phishing attempt. And tricky people may also pretend to be someone famous for many possible types of scams, depending on the circumstances. And tricky people are also tricky because they use fake names and pictures, and they make up stories about themselves. And one of the key elements to virtually every scam is the intent to create a strong emotional reaction in the victim. They know that emotion trumps thought. When people are scared, worried, excited, or in love, they don't think as clearly, and they're more likely to miss the warning signs that they are being scammed. Because so many scams revolve around fear and worry, we created a separate module to address them. That's the fear tactics. Because there are scammers that are willing to take their time to develop trust and an online relationship with their victims, we developed romance scams to cover those specific tactics. Another key idea or concept for you to really reinforce with folks often is, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. So from this point on, since Tricky People was kind of our overview, As we review each module, I'll try to really focus on the specifics that are covered in that module that are not necessarily touched on elsewhere. So fear tactics. There are many scams that use fear to get people to give personal information. Tricky people might claim to be an authority figure or someone who is in a position to inform you of a problem and who, ironically, is also able to fix that problem with a little financial incentive. Some tricky people are even able to fake the numbers on your caller ID to make the call appear legitimate. In emails, they use logos, etc., to make their emails appear as if they come from a legitimate company. And we cover this in greater depth in the phishing module, by the way. And the reasons that they contact the victim typically revolve around fabricated issues that must be addressed quickly to fix that problem or to avoid trouble, fees, fines, even arrest for the individual or for someone important to them. And the other thing is, the person might know some information about their victim, like the name, address, stuff that's easily obtained online, but it makes them seem more legitimate. They might ask the person to confirm information that they pretend to already have, like their account number or their social security number. And they're typically going to ask people for the usual stuff, right? Personal information, some sort of payment, or they will offer to help the person. Again, that usually involves a fee of some sort. And then all of the modules contain a section that gives learners key information about that topic. So this is an example that comes from the warrant threat scams, which is one of the scams that's covered in fear tactics. So we look at the key information about the topic, and then we also provide specific suggestions for protecting oneself from an online scam. And in this case, this is a blackmail scam, another one of the specific scams that's covered in fear tactics. And here is a very important point that you need to reinforce frequently for folks. There is no way to permanently delete something once it's online. I think there's a misconception that, if I just delete it off my phone or off my laptop or off my social media account, that it's gone. That is not true. And once somebody has it, they got it. And so I think that's something that we need to always be reinforcing with our folks, because it's very easy to convince folks to, send compromising pictures or videos, for example. And then once that happens, it's really a pretty dark rabbit hole that the person is going down at that point. And then we also try to cover any additional information that might be helpful. So for example, in fear tactics, we provide some basic information, during the module, and then we elaborate in the handout for supporters. The reality is that next steps are really determined by what happened, as well as how the person responded to what happened. So if they gave out their credit card number, the response will be different than if they gave out their Amazon username and password. And a particular note, throughout the modules, we encourage people to stop contact or to hang up if they recognize any signs of a tricky person or if they have any questions or concerns. And this can sometimes cause distress for folks. Did I just hang up on a real police officer? Was it really my grandson calling me for help? What if there really is a problem with my bank account and I just hung up? And so we've attempted to anticipate some of those concerns as well. And we include suggestions for supporters in the supporters manual on how to help the person check into those concerns. Identity theft is when tricky people are able to get personal information that they then use to pretend to be the victim. Some common ways that they use that information: they may purchase items for themselves using the victim's credit card. They may sign up for credit cards in the victim's name, but have the cards sent to themselves instead. They might transfer or withdraw money from the victim's bank account. And if they get someone's social security number, they can actually even file for and receive their tax refund. That one kind of blew me away when I was doing the research for these trainings, I gotta tell you. So the identity theft module covers a variety of general safety rules, like keeping usernames and passwords safe. So it's important that as a supporter, you never ask the person for usernames or passwords. While it might make helping the person easier, we really need to be strongly reinforcing the message to people that they should never give their passwords to anyone. And in fact, we explicitly mention staff in the training module, that staff, they should not be giving them to staff either. Because again, it's very, very important for people to understand that that is extremely private and it is really only for them. We also try to provide information that might be helpful in various environments. For example, in the identity theft module, we review steps to take to protect identity at home, online, particularly on social media, and in the community as well. And again, we use visuals to help enhance explanations. Also in the identity theft module, we go into a bit more detail on what to do if credit, debit, or social security cards were lost or stolen, or the numbers given to a tricky person. In the training, really, we focus on providing people with basic information about what to expect. For example, that it can take up to 2 weeks to receive a new debit card. And, so they're going to need to be prepared for that because they won't have that ability to access money. The reality is this can get really complicated really quickly. And so we provide a lot of additional information in the handout for supporters because there's a lot to know and to do. And it's quite frankly nightmarish. So people are probably going to need some assistance. Phishing. Phishing is when tricky people use texts, emails, phone calls, or websites that seem real to scam people. And some of these folks are very good at spoofing, making an email or a website look like it came from a real bank or usually a well-known company like Facebook, PayPal, Amazon. They use company logos and they attempt to make their communications appear legitimate. Phishing is the most common internet crime in the United States. And like most scams, phishing messages intend to create an emotional reaction in the recipient. And so the first question that we encourage individuals to ask themselves when they receive an unsolicited message is, how does this email, text, or phone call make me feel? Phishing messages may make you feel excited. They tell you you've won something, or someone you don't even know has sent you money. But most of the time, phishing messages tell you there's a problem that needs to be addressed quickly. And remember, they want you to worry, so you will hurry. So they might tell you that you need to renew or upgrade your account. There's a problem with your account. For example, someone's been trying to log into your account, or someone has your password. Ironically, phishing scams often tell you that they're trying to keep your account safe from tricky people, saying that someone is trying to steal from you. A warning about a possible computer virus is a common phishing scam. And this can occur, This is one of the ones that oftentimes occurs by phone. You get a phone call from somebody claiming to be from Microsoft, Dell, Apple, saying, we've discovered there's a problem with your computer and we can help for a fee. They might send you a fake invoice, bill you for something that you didn't order. And phishing messages may ask you to reply with personal information, but most of the time, they provide a link that they encourage you to click so that you can address the problem. And these fake links will do one of two things. They'll take you to a fake website that usually appears real. And this site will then ask you for personal information like usernames and passwords or payment information via bank account or credit card numbers. Or the link will initiate a download of malware onto your computer, which will allow the tricky person to access everything stored on your computer and even to watch everything you do, like logging into your bank account or a shopping site. Excuse me. And I wanted to mention briefly, because this slide also indicates ransomware. This is a little bit different than malware in that ransomware is where they can actually hold up the information on your computer and make it so that you cannot access anything until you pay a ransom. That's more likely to occur with companies rather than individuals. So we don't really spend a lot of time on that. But probably I would guess that your employer spends a lot of time on that. And we probably all have had those kinds of trainings, right? About don't click on these types of emails and blah, blah, blah. So there are several clues that can help people identify a phishing scam. So one of the things to look for is misspellings, typos. And again, these next few slides come directly from the training. So this is how we, try to visually show people what to look for. You may see odd or unusual wording. Legitimate companies are very careful to make sure that they only send out professional communications. So when you see this kind of stuff, it's a really big red flag. A lot of scams originate from other non-English speaking countries. So grammatical errors caused by translation are frequent. If the email address doesn't match the purported source. Also, legitimate companies don't typically use free email providers. So Gmail, Yahoo, Hotmail are all red flags that this is probably a scam. One easy trick is to hover over the link. Don't click, just hover. And what you will see is the visible link can be spoofed, but the URL that pops up, that's where the link is actually going, that can't be spoofed. If they don't match, don't click. And currently, our last module to cover is romance scams. Some tricky people pretend they want a romantic relationship to get money or personal information from their victims. Unlike many scams, the romance scams typically play out over a longer period of time and multiple contacts because they're building trust with their victim. And romance scams are very common. It's estimated that 1 in every 7 online dating profiles are fake. And while the details may change, there are some commonalities that can help people identify a romance scam. While they are slow, sometimes they may wait a long time to ask for money or personal information. They are very quick to tell the person that they love them. They tend to like all of the same things as the victim. They care about them and their problems. They give lots of compliments and cute nicknames. They send love songs. They might send gifts for no reason. And this can actually be confusing to folks because why would they spend money on me and send me a gift if they were trying to get money from me? Well, romance scammers see this as an investment. They're investing a small amount in a small gift for you in the hopes to get a much larger amount later. Also, tricky people that perpetuate romance scams, they don't want the people that are looking out for that individual to know what they're saying to them. So they typically will ask them to keep their relationship a special secret. They might ask them to go to private chat sites, or to not tell their friends or family about the relationship yet, right? It's our little special secret. And also, they typically say that they live far away, usually overseas. Saying that they're in the military is really common, as is claiming to live or work in another country. And they always say that they want to meet the person, but there's always an excuse why they can't. And eventually, the person will have some sort of emergency. They will need to make car repairs so that they can get to work. Because how else will they make money to buy a ticket to come and visit, right? They've been robbed. They've been hurt and have medical bills. Or maybe they're in the military and they're being deployed. They need to sell their car right away. Their buddy wants to buy it, but he doesn't have the money yet. Can you buy it and have him pay you back? They can be really, really creative. The thing is, if you know what to kind of listen for and you pay close attention, you can notice that certain aspects of their story don't add up and may even be contradictory. So they might tell you that they have been unable to do something and then later state that they did it. They may use terminology that doesn't match kind of the topic. So for example, a military person might call their fellow soldiers colleagues, not usually a term that you hear being bantered about in the military. Their stories are often so heartbreaking and they sound so desperate that victims offer to help before the scammer even has to ask. And when they ask for money, they typically promise to pay it back as soon as they can. They, of course, ask for the money in untraceable ways, and they want it sent either to them or sometimes to someone on their behalf, their quote unquote landlord or mechanic, etc. If they make a request for personal information, that typically it centers around a need to fill out paperwork to include that person in their life somehow. So for example, they might want to, because they love this person so much and they're going to marry them, they want to include them in their insurance paperwork so that that person will get their death benefits. And of course, then they will need a lot of personal information in order to fill out that paperwork. As supporters, it's really important for us to remember the old adage, love is blind. Unfortunately, by the time loved ones find out, the victim is often so convinced of that person's love that it's really difficult for them to see the truth. So when you're supporting somebody that's caught up in a romance scam, it's really important to remember that they may react poorly when you try to tell them that the love of their life is a fake. So rather than confronting the person with what's obvious to you, it might be better to begin by asking questions. Maybe suggest that you review the romance scams handout or even watch the training again. And then gently ask the person whether or not the individual in question has ever used any of those tactics that are covered in the training in the handout. And it's also important to, reassure that individual that they deserve to be loved for real, not by someone who would trick them and steal from them. And you just want to help them make sure that that relationship is legitimate. It may also be helpful for folks to know that they are not alone. In 2020, there were more than 33,000 reports of romance scams in the US, with scammers getting over $304 million. That's about an average of $2,500 per victim. And the reality is there are likely many more that were not reported because the victim is too embarrassed to admit that they were duped. Romance scammers are often very good at what they do, making it difficult for anyone to recognize their tricks. Getting scammed has absolutely nothing to do with having an intellectual disability. It can happen to anyone. So the person should not be embarrassed because they did nothing wrong. The tricky person is the bad guy. And I just want to tell you about this because this is one of the quickest ways to check out a new contact is to do, or even an old contact, but to do a reverse image search. So what you do is you go to images.google.com, you click on the camera icon, and then you're going to take the person's profile picture or some other picture that they've sent you, and you're going to either click and drag or cut and paste it into the search bar. You could also cut and paste the URL of that picture into the search bar. And then when you search, you're going to look for terms like stock photo, look for online photo sources like Shutterstock or iStock to show up in relation to that person's picture. If that happens, it is not that person's real picture. You can also dig around a little bit online, look for information about when and where that picture was taken and see if it matches what the person said. But the other thing that's important for us to reinforce with folks is that not all fakes show up in a reverse image search. This is a really good way to tell that something is a fake, but it's not always the best way to tell that something is not a fake. Because a person could use their own picture and their own name and still be a scammer. So once people have gone through the modules, then there are tests for each. There's a test for each module, and it's a self-guided kind of thing. And again, the person is given a choice. If they make the correct choice, we confirm and reinforce the information. If they make an incorrect choice, we reteach and loop them back to try again. So I wanted to show you just a couple of examples from a couple of the different tests and how this works. Okay. So this is from Tricky People, and the person is asked to click on the message that is likely a tricky person. You are our band's biggest fan, yada, yada. Can you come work with the band? Versus you are our band's biggest fan. You can upgrade to VIP status when you buy concert tickets. So the trick, if we want the person to click on the one that's a tricky person, then the incorrect answer is the one that's not a tricky person. And that is going to be, if I can get, there it is. So this is not the tricky person. We can probably have a pretty good guess on that, right? So we, again, reteach or give the person an understanding of why that answer is incorrect. So bands often offer members of the fan club special deals, so this is nothing unusual. Probably not a tricky person. Try again. They click on try again, it takes them back. And this time they choose the tricky person is the one that asked them to come and work with the band. And that has literally happened, by the way. You are correct. Tricky people want to make you feel excited by offering you something they know you want. And then they move on to the next question. This one comes from identity theft. Marcus wants to be able to remember his password for his new account, so he uses the name of his dog. Is this a good idea? If the person clicks yes, that's a good idea. Using pet names for passwords is not a good idea. If they find out the name of his pet, they might guess his password. Marcus should think of a different password. Try again. No, not a good idea to use the name of your pet. You're correct. It would be too easy for a tricky person to guess Marcus's password if he used the name of his pet. And then they move on. Most of the tests are all very different. Most of them have multiple scenarios with the exception of romance scams. Romance scams actually walks the person through sort of a complete process that they might go through. One of the things that a lot of times scammers, especially the romance scammers, will do is if the person tries to stop contact with them, they can get very pushy, sometimes threatening. They might threaten to break up with the person if they don't, do what they want them to do or whatever. And so it kind of takes people through a whole sort of process that and the different responses that they might bump into from a tricky person, and then different ways that they might respond and what that might lead to next. So that one's slightly different than most of them, but most of them are more like the examples that I just showed you. And so there's some things that are, as a supporter, important for you to really remember. I've touched on a few things throughout the training, and I just want to wrap up with a few more. As a supporter, it's important that you keep in mind that if the person comes to you for help, it means that they trust you, and you should feel honored. But you also need to be prepared. You need to know the steps to take or how to find out what to do. There's a lot of different things that might need to happen related to various scams. They might need to block that individual on their accounts, social media, etc. They might need to contact law enforcement or their bank or credit card companies. They may need to report something online, like at identitytheft.gov, something like that. And it's also really important that we reassure the person that they did nothing wrong. We can't overstate this enough. They may have clicked on a dangerous link or they trusted the wrong person, but the tricky person is the bad guy, period. So looking forward, we are hoping to have the current modules up and running in March, pending any last minute glitches, because sometimes it's easier than others to get our learning management system, where we post all of our trainings, to play nice with some of the recordings. But that is the intention. So I think we're on track for that for sure. Then we are also going to start working on a charity scams module that will be put up at a later date. When that happens, when and if we add modules, we will also update the supporters training manual to reflect those things as well. And then really, we're just going to start responding to feedback as people start using these trainings, as we start getting feedback about what works, what doesn't work, as we start getting feedback about what other kinds of things people might need to have covered, other topics, etc. We'll look at expanding the modules as we go. So I know I kind of blasted through. I didn't stop for questions earlier simply because I think you kind of needed to hear what the modules were all about before you could really, I think, develop questions. So does anyone have any questions, thoughts, or comments? You're welcome to unmute. You can put it in the chat box, whatever is comfortable for you. Okay, no questions, thoughts, comments? All right, then what I will do is I will end this training with the sign out that we use for every single one of the training modules. It seems like there are so many dangers online, it can be hard to know what to do. There's a lot to worry about. It can get kind of discouraging. So think about what you've learned. We hope that this training has helped you build your skills so that you will know what to do when you encounter a tricky person. Be smart, be safe. Thank you. Hey, take care, everybody. Thank you for coming. If you think of any questions, please contact us. Take care. Bye, guys.